began, that like people had worked on this, for eons and so on. I didn't know all that. I just knew I wanted to solve it. And so the bus kept on getting fuller and fuller with people, and it got hotter and hotter, and I was uncomfortable. So I closed my eyes so I, kind of could escape. And when I closed my eyes, I kind of, in my mind's eye, I thought if I want to figure out dimension, maybe I should like try to visualize larger scales. So I escaped the bus in my mind's eye and rose above the bus. And as I rose up, I saw the bus slowly becoming a dot. And then I rose up further and I saw the Earth becoming a dot. And then I rose up further and I saw the solar system becoming a dot. And then I rose up further and I saw the galaxy becoming a dot. And I had this moment of epiphany, like, maybe it's all dots, and then I just flew back in, and in the galaxy, I found the solar system, found the Earth, found the bus, jumped back in, and then I opened my eyes and I looked at my hand and I closed my eyes again. I said, "What about what's smaller?" So I closed my eyes and with my mind's eye, I went into my hand and into the cells of my hand, and I saw that they were dots, I didn't know necessarily they were called cells at the time, probably. But then I looked inside the cell and I saw that it was made out of billions of little shiny dots. And those were atoms. And I jumped into one of those and I looked down the middle of the atom and I saw that it was a dot there. And, and then I kept on seeing dots. And then I got it. I said, oh, the solution to the problem is that instead of assuming that dimension 0 has no dimensionality, that it has no existence, is the exact contrary, is that the only thing that exists is dots. All there is point particle, like singularities. I didn't know that term at the time, but I assumed that everything was made out of dots. And that the universe had all these dots and it put the dots together and made all sorts of things, but that the fundamental structure of space was a dot, a singularity, a point of infinite density that could be divided to infinity. Wow, I was excited about that. I just was flying from one scale of dot to the other, and I could look at the people in the bus and I could see they were made out of dots that were made out of dots that were made out of smaller dots, and they were all shiny. And when you have a intuition or how do you say a revelation, thank you, you get all excited and you want to tell someone. And most of the time, you tell the person and, it's not always well received. Well, I didn't know who to talk to. I wasn't going to talk to the bus driver or anything. So I ran out of the bus when I got home and got to my place, and I waited for my mom to get back from work. And then when my mom finally came home, I was like, Mom, I've got something figured. I figured out something at school today. And she was like, oh, really? She got really excited because she thought I did good at school for the first time in my life. And I said, Mom, there was this lesson on dimension, and I explained the whole thing. And I said, no, I think that's wrong. I said, I think everything's made out of dots, and you're made out of dots to infinity, Mom, and da-da-da-da. And she looked at me with that look, the look of despair on an Italian mother. That's like a force that you got to be reckoned with. And she said, I don't think that's the answer they're going to want on the exam. And you should stick to the curriculum and try not to, do it. And she said, anyway, she said, I just worked for 8 hours and I don't feel infinite at all. And she had made a point. I mean, I kind of realized, wait a minute, I can't be going around telling people that everything is infinite if, how come things have a finite boundary? I mean, things are finite. Mom is finite. How does this work? I can't have finite and infinite. how does this work? And so I basically didn't say anything to anybody else. And I started to think about it, and really it became a source of inspiration and a research from that moment on. By the age of 11, I was kind of really realizing that that concept of the dot having infinite density was interesting, but I had still no way of describing it. However, I was getting very discouraged with the whole world at that point. I was having a hard time with schools. I was discouraged with the world. I was pretty well suicidal, and asked my mom, like, would it bother you much if I jumped out the window? And it was at that time that a young master of meditation came into my life. He was only 14, from East India, and I was 11, and I learned to meditate. And when I did, I realized that there was a whole world that, I could turn my senses inward and kind of connect to. And it was kind of the same concept, that there was a dot in the middle of me that, that was the source of my existence that I could connect to. And it was really interesting. And then I start to realize, then there must be a relationship between what's going in and what's going out. And the relationship between what's going in and what's going out creates a boundary but I didn't know how to explain it. I didn't realize I was describing fractals. And I didn't realize what it implied in terms of physics. Because, having spiritual and philosophical concepts is all good. But if you don't apply it to advanced physics and mathematics and technology, you still have a problem. You still have pollution. You still have all sorts of problems, water raising, that you may be able to solve if you applied these higher concepts. And this planet is really divided. All the spiritual people saying, we don't need no stinking technology. Usually they tell me that on their cell phone driving their car. And I interact with a lot of physicists. I lecture in universities and stuff. And, the physicist, on the other hand, tells me, oh, we don't need no stinking consciousness, and and that's really a problem if you're gonna be the conscious person writing the equation. If the consciousness is not there, how are you gonna write that equation, dude? So that and so like bringing the two together is a really big issue. But I didn't know all these things. Eventually, I realized that through simple mathematical equations, and certainly through simple geometric structure, the dichotomy between infinities and finite system can be resolved. And that is a fundamental problem in current physics, meaning the major issue that we're struggling with in physics at this time is infinities. Infinities creep up in the equations everywhere, and singularity is basically unsolved. So it kind of separates quantum physics from relativistic equation, and there's this whole problem in unifying all the math and all the physics due to that infinite problem, infinity problem. So jumping ahead, because we have a short amount of time, you can see how my seminar takes a long time. I got to describe infinity to you guys. But in simple terms right now, I'm going to prove to you that finite systems and infinite systems are actually together, that they work with each other, that actually you can't have finite system without infinities, you can't have infinities